This play is called Our Town. It was written by Thornton Wilder, produced and directed by Tim Cocking. In this play, you will see Miss Boyles, Miss Cocking, Miss Rice and Mr. Owen, Mr. Reed, Mr. Negron, and many, many others. The name of the town is Grover's Corners, New Hampshire. It's just across the Massachusetts line. Latitude, 42 degrees, 40 minutes. Longitude, 72 degrees, 37 minutes. The first act shows a day in our town. The day is May 7th, 1901. The time? Well, it's just before dawn. You can see a few streaks of light over in the east there, behind our mountain. The morning star always gets awful bright the moment for us to go, doesn't it? Well, I better show you how our town lies. Up here is Main Street. Way back there is the railroad station. The tracks go that way. Across the tracks is Polish Town and some Canuck families. Over there is the Congregational Church. Across the streets, the Presbyterian. Methodist and Unitarian are over there. And Baptist is down the hollow by the river. And Catholic Church is way beyond the tracks. Along here is a row of stores. Horse blocks and hitching posts in front of them. The first automobile is going to come around in about 5 years. Belonged to banker Cartwright. He's our richest citizen. He lives in the big White House up on the hill. And here is a grocery store, Mr. Morgan's drugstore. You know, most everybody in town manages to go into these two stores at least once a day. Public school is over yonder, high school. Well, it's farther over. 9:15 mornings, noon times, 3:15 afternoons. The whole town can hear the yelling and screaming in those schoolyards. So, this is our doctor's house, Doc Gibbs. This is the front door. There's some scenery. For those who think they have to have scenery. Over here is Mrs. Gibbs' garden. Corn, peas, hollyhock, heliotrope, and a lot of burdock. In those days, our town newspaper came out twice a week. The Grover's Corners Sentinel. And this is Editor Webb's house. Mrs. Webb's garden. It's just like Mrs. Gibbs' garden, except hers has got a whole lot of sunflowers in it too. And right here is the big butternut tree. It's a nice town. You know what I mean? Nobody ever remarkable will ever come out of it, as far as we know. The earliest tombstones up in the cemetery, well, they say 1670, 1680. They're Grovers and Cartwrights, Gibbses and Herseys. Same names around here now. Well, as I said, it's about dawn. The only lights on in town are over in Polish Town, where a Polish mother has just given birth to twins. And in the Joe Crow house over there, where Joe Jr. is getting up to deliver the morning paper. And of course in the depot, where Shorty Hawkins is getting ready to fag the 5:45 in Boston. Naturally, out in the country and all around, there have been lights on for quite some time. What with the milking and so on. The town people sleep late. So, another day's begun. There's Doc Gibbs coming down Main Street now. He's coming back from that baby case. And here comes his wife, Mrs. Gibbs, coming downstairs to make breakfast. Doc Gibbs died in 1930. The new hospital was named after him. Mrs. Gibbs died first. It was a long time ago, in fact. She went out to visit her daughter Rebecca, who married an insurance man in Canton, Ohio. She died there, pneumonia, but her body was brought back here. She's up there in the cemetery now, in with a whole messes of Gibbses and Herseys. You know, she was Julia Hersey before she married Doc Gibbs in a Congregational church over there. In our town, we like to know the facts about everybody. There comes Mrs. Webb coming downstairs to make breakfast. That's Doc Gibbs. Got that call at 1:30 this morning. Here comes Joe Crow Jr., delivering the morning paper.
Morning, Doc Gibbs.
Morning, Joe.
Somebody been sick, Doc?
No, just a pair of twins born over in Polish Town.
Do you want your paper now?
Yes, I'll take it. Anything serious going on in the world since Wednesday?
Yes, sir. My school teacher, Miss Foster, is getting married to a fellow over in Concord.
I declare. How do you boys feel about that?
Well, it's none of my business, but I think if someone starts out to be a teacher, she ought to stay one.
How's your knee, Joe?
Well, it's none of my business. It doesn't bother me much, Doc. Just like you said, it always tells me when it's going to rain.
What's it telling you today? Going to rain?
No, sir?
Sure?
Yes, sir?
You ever made a mistake?
No, sir.
I want to tell you something about that boy Joe Crow over there. You know, Joe was awful bright. He graduated from high school here, head of his class. So, he got a scholarship to Massachusetts Tech. Graduated head of his class there too. It was all written up in the Boston paper at the time. He was going to be a great engineer, Joe was. But the war broke out, and he died in France. All that education for nothing.
Giddy up, Bessie.
Here comes Howie Newsom delivering the milk.
Morning, Doc.
Morning, Howie.
Somebody been sick?
Pair of twins over to Mrs. Goroslawski's.
Twins, eh? This town's getting bigger every year.
Going to rain, Howie?
No. Fine day. That'll burn through. Come on, Bessie.
Hello, Bessie. How old is she, Howie?
Going on 17. Bessie's been all mixed up about the route ever since the Lockharts stopped taking their quart of milk every day. She wants to leave them a quart just the same.
Morning, Howie.
Morning, Miss Gibbs. Doc's just coming down the street.
Is he? Seems like you're late today.
Yes, well, something wrong with the separator. Don't know what 'twas. Doc?
Howie?
Children, time to get up.
Come on, Bessie.
George, Rebecca. Everything all right, Frank?
Yes, I declare. Easy as kittens.
Bacon will be ready in a minute. Sit down and drink your coffee. You can catch a couple hours sleep this morning, can't you?
Miss Wentworth's coming at 11. I guess I know what it's about, too. Her stomach ain't what it ought to be.
All told, you won't get more than 3 hours of sleep. Frank Gibbs, I don't know what's going to become of you. I do wish I could get you to get a rest someplace and take a rest someplace and go away. I think it would do you good.
Children, time to get up. Winnie, 7 o'clock.
I declare, you've got to speak to George. Seems like something's come over him lately. He's no help to me at all. Can't even get him to cut me some wood.
Is he sassy to you?
No, he just whines. All he thinks about is that baseball. George!
George, look sharp.
Yes, Pop.
Don't you hear your mother calling you? I guess I'll go upstairs and get some rest.
Emily, Winnie, you'll be late for school. Winnie, you wash yourself, put her, I'll come up and do it myself.
Mom, what dress shall I wear?
Don't make a noise. Your father's been out all night and needs his rest. I washed and ironed the blue gingham for you special.
Ugh, but Mom, you know I hate that dress.
Oh, hush up with you.
Every day I go to school dressed like a sick turkey.
No, Rebecca, you always look very nice.
Mama, George is throwing soap at me.
I'll come up and slap the both of you. That's what I'll do.
Got a factory in our town too. Hear it? Makes blankets. The Cartwrights own it. And it brung them a fortune.
Children, now I won't have it. Breakfast is just as good as any other meal, and I won't have you gobbling it like wolves. Put away your book, Winnie. Oh, Ma, by 10 o'clock I gotta know about Canada.
You know the rules as well as I do. No books at the table. As for me, I'd rather have my children healthy than bright.
I'm both, Mama. You know I am. I'm the brightest girl at school for my age. I have a wonderful memory.
Eat your breakfast. I'm right, too, when I'm looking at my stamp collection.
I'll speak to your father about it when he's rested. Seems to me like 25 cents a week's enough for a boy your age. I declare, I don't know how you spend it all.
Ma, I got a lot of things to buy.
Strawberry phosphates. That's what you spend it on.
Well, I don't see how Rebecca comes to have so much money. She has more than $1.
Well, that's because I've been saving it up gradual.
Well, dear, I think it's good to spend some every now and then.
Mama, do you know what I love most in the world? Do you? Money.
Eat your breakfast.
Ooh, the first bell.
Thomas Foster, I sent a best congratulations.
Yes, Mom.
Bye, Ma.
You look real nice, Rebecca. Pick up your feet.
Bye, Mama.
Here, chick, chick, chick. Here, chick, chick, chick. No, go away, you. Go away. Here, chick, chick, chick. Fight, fight, fight. That's all you do. You don't belong to me. Where did you come from? Oh, don't be scared. Nobody's gonna hurt you. Good morning, Myrtle. How's your cold?
Well, I still get that tickling feeling in my throat. I told Charles I don't know if I'll be able to go to choir practice tonight. Wouldn't be much use.
Have you tried singing over your voice?
Yes, but I can't do that and still seem to stay on key. While I'm resting myself, I thought I'd string some of these beans.
Let me help you. Doing something good this year.
Yes, I've decided to put up 40 quarts if it kills me. The children say they hate them, but I noticed they're able to get them down all winter.
Now, Myrtle, I've got to tell you something. Because if I don't tell somebody, I'll burst.
Why, Julia Gibbs.
Here, give me some more of those beans. Myrtle, did one of those second-hand furniture men from Boston come and see you last Friday?
No?
Well, he called on me. First, I thought he was a patient wanting to see Dr. Gibbs, and he wormed his way into my parlor, and Myrtle Webb, he offered me $350 for Grandmother Wentworth's highboy as I'm sitting there.
Why, Julia Gibbs.
He did, that old thing. Why, it was so big I didn't know where to put it, and almost gave it to Cousin Hester Wilcox.
Well, you're gonna take it, aren't you?
I don't know.
You don't know? $350? What's come over you?
Well, if I could get the doctor to take the money and go away someplace on a real trip, I'd sell it like that. You know, Myrtle, it's been the dream of my life to see Paris, France. I don't know. Sounds crazy, I suppose. But for years, I've been promising myself that if we ever had the chance.
Well, how does the doctor feel about it?
Well, I did beat around the bush a little and said that if we got a legacy, that's the way I put it, I'd make him take me somewhere.
What did he say?
Oh, you know how he is. I haven't heard a serious word out of him since I've known him. No, he said. Might make him discontented with Grover's Corners to go traipsing about Europe. Better leave well enough alone, he says. Every 2 years, he makes a trip up to the battlefields of the Civil War, and that's enough treat for anyone, he says.
Well, Mr. Webb just admires the way Doc Gibbs knows everything about the Civil War. Mr. Webb has a mind to give up Napoleon and move over to the Civil War. Only Doc Gibbs, being one of the greatest experts in the country, just makes him despair.
That's a fact. Dr. Gibbs is never so happy as when he's at Antietam or Gettysburg. The times I've walked over those hills, Myrtle, stopping at every bush and pacing it out like we were going to buy it.
Well, if that second-hand man's really serious about buying it, Julia, you sell it. That way you'll get to see Paris, all right? Just keep dropping hints from time to time. That's how I got to see the Atlantic Ocean, you know?
Oh, I'm sorry I mentioned it. Only, it seems to me that once in your life, before you die, you ought to see a country where they don't talk in English. Don't even want to.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you very much. I have to interrupt here, I'm afraid. Now we're going to skip a few hours. First, we want a little more information about our town. Kind of a scientific account, you might say. So I've asked Professor Willard of our State University to sketch in a few brief notes of our past history here. May I introduce Professor Willard of our State University. Two brief notes, thank you, Professor. Unfortunately, our time is limited.
Thank you. Grover's Corners, let me see. Grover's Corners lies on the old Pleistocene granite of the Appalachian Range. I may say some of the oldest land in the world, and we're very proud of that. Our shelf of a Devonian basalt crosses with the vestiges of Mesozoic shale and some sandstone outcroppings, but that's all more recent, 200, 300 million years old. Some highly interesting fossils have been found, I may say unique fossils, 2 miles out of town, and Silas Beckham's cow pasture. They can be seen at the museum at our state university at any time. That is, at any reasonable time. I'm sure we some of us professors.
Have you any comments on the history of man here?
Yes, anthropological data. Early Amerindian stock, Cotahatchee tribes. No evidence before the 10th century of this era. Now entirely disappeared. Possible traces found in 2 families. Migration toward the end of the 17th century of the English brachiocephalic blue-eyed stock. Since stems from
and the population, Professor Willett.
Within the town limits, 2,640.
Just a moment.
Oh yes, indeed. Population at the moment is 2,642. The postal district brings in 507 more, making a total of 3,149. Mortality and birth rate constant by McPherson's gauge 6.032.
Thank you very much, Professor Willett. We're all very much obliged to you, I'm sure.
Not at all, sir. Not at all.
This way. Thank you once again. And now, the political and social report. Editor Webb. Oh, Mr. Webb.
He'll be out in a minute. He just cut his hand while he was eating an apple.
Thank you, Mrs. Webb.
Charles, everyone's waiting.
Mr. Webb is editor and publisher of the Grover's Corner Sentinel. That's our local paper, you know. Mr. Webb.
Well, I don't have to tell you that we're run by a board of selectmen. All males vote at the age of 21. Women vote indirect. We're lower middle class, sprinkling of professional men, 10% illiterate laborers. Politically, we're 86% Republican, 6% Democrat, 4% socialist. Rest indifferent. Religiously, we're 85% Protestant, 12% Catholic. Rest indifferent.
Have you any comments, Mr. Webb?
Very ordinary town, if you ask me. A little better behaved than most. Probably a lot duller. But our young people seem to like it well enough. You know, 90% of them graduating from high school settle down right here to live, even after they've been away to college.
Now, is there anyone in the audience who would like to ask Editor Webb any questions at all?
Is there much drinking in Grover's Corners?
Well, ma'am, I don't know what you'd call much. Saturday nights, the farmhands go down to Pellegrino's stable and holler some. We've got 1 or 2 town drunks, but they're always having remorses every time an evangelist comes to town. No, ma'am, I'd say liquor ain't a regular thing in the home here, except in the medicine chest. Right good for snake bites, you know. Always was.
Come forward, will you? Where we can all hear you. That's better. Now, where were you?
Is it not a town where social injustice and industrial inequality?
Oh yes, everybody is. Something terrible. Seems like they spend all their time talking about who's rich and who's poor.
Well, then why don't they do something about it?
Well, I don't know. I guess we're all hunting like everybody else for a way the diligent and sensible can rise to the top and the lazy and quarrelsome can sink to the bottom. But it ain't easy to find. Meanwhile, we do all we can to help those who can't help themselves, and those that can, we leave alone. Are there any other questions?
Oh, Mr. Webb, is there any culture or love of beauty in Grover's Corners?
Well, ma'am, there isn't much. Not in the sense you mean. Come to think of it, there's some girls who play the piano at high school commencement, but they ain't happy about it. No, there isn't much culture. But maybe this is the place to tell you that we've got a lot of pleasures of a kind here. We like the sun coming over the mountains in the mornings. And we all notice a good deal about the birds. We pay a lot of attention to them. And we watch the change of the seasons. Everybody knows about them. But those other things, you're right, ma'am, there isn't much. Robinson Crusoe and the Bible, and Handel's Largo, everybody knows that, and Whistler's Mother. Those are just about as far as we go.
So I thought. Thank you, Mr. Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Right. Now, we're going to go back to town. It's early afternoon. All 2,642 have had their dinners, and all the dishes have been washed. There's an early afternoon calm in our town. A buzzing and a humming from the school buildings. A few buggies on Main Street. Horses dozing in the hitching posts. You all remember what it's like. Doc Gibbs is in his office, tapping people, making them say, ah. Mr. Webb here, well, he's pushing his lawnmower. You know, 1 man in 10 thinks it's a privilege to push their own lawnmower. Oh, no, sir. It's later than I thought. There are the children coming over from school already.
I can't, Lois. I've got to go home and help my mother. I promised.
Emily, walk simply. Who do you think you are today?
Papa, you're terrible. One minute you tell me to stand up straight, and the next minute you call me names. I just don't listen to you.
Golly, I never got a kiss from such a great lady before. Excuse me, Miss Forrest. Awfully sorry, Mrs. Forrest. Hello, Emily.
Hello.
You made a fine speech in class.
Well, I was really ready to give a speech about the Monroe Doctrine, but at the last minute, Miss Corcoran made me talk about the Louisiana Purchase instead. I worked an awfully long time on both of them.
Gee, it's funny, Emily. From my window up there, I can just see your head at nights when you're doing homework over in your room.
Why can you?
Yeah, you certainly do stick to it. I don't see how you can sit there for that long.
Well,
I guess you like school.
I always feel it's something you have to go through.
Yeah.
I don't mind it, really. It passes the time.
Yeah. Emily, what do you think? We might run a kind of telegraph from your window to mine, and every once in a while, you could give me a hint on one of those algebra problems. I don't mean the answers, Emily. Just some hints.
Oh, well, I think hints are allowed. So, if you get stuck, George, you whistle to me, and I'll give you some hints.
You're just naturally bright, I guess.
I figure that's just the way a person's born.
Yeah. But you see, I want to be a farmer when I grow up. And my Uncle Luke says that whenever I'm ready, I can come over and work on his farm. And if I'm any good, I can gradually have it.
You mean the house and everything?
Yeah. Thanks, Emily. I better be going out to the baseball field. Thanks for the talk. Good afternoon, Mrs. Webb.
Good afternoon, George.
So long, Emily.
So long, George.
Emily, come sit a minute and help me string some of these beans for the winter. Well, George Gibbs let himself have a real conversation, didn't he? How old would he be now?
I don't know.
Let's see. He must be almost 16.
Mama, I made a speech in class today, and I was very good.
You must recite it for your father after supper. What was it about?
The Louisiana Purchase. It was just like silk off a spool. I'm going to make speeches all my life. Mama, can I ask you a question? Serious?
Seriously, dear.
Oh,
not
seriously,
serious.
Mama, will you?
Of course I will.
Mama, am I good looking?
Yes, of course you are. All my children have good features. I'd be ashamed if they hadn't.
Mama, that's not what I mean. What I mean is, am I pretty?
I already told you yes. Now that's enough of that. You have a nice, young, pretty face. Never heard of such foolishness.
Mama, you never tell us the truth about anything.
I am telling you the truth.
Well, Mama, were you pretty?
Yes, I was, if I do say so myself. I was the prettiest girl in town next to Mammy Cartwright.
But Mama, you've got to say something about me. Am I pretty enough to get people, to get anybody interested in me?
Emily, you make me tired. You're pretty enough for all normal purposes. Now, come along and bring that bowl with you.
Mama, you're no help at all.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Mrs. Webb. I'll have to interrupt again here, I'm afraid. You see, there are some more things we want to explore about our town. I think this is a good time to tell you that the Cartwright interests have just begun building a new bank in Grover's Corners. They had to go to Vermont for the marble, I'm sorry to say. They've asked a friend of mine what they should put in the cornerstone for people to dig up 1,000 years from now. So, we're putting in a copy of the New York Times and a copy of Mr. Webb's Sentinel. We're kind of interested in this because some scientific fellas found a way of painting all this reading matter with a glue, a silicate glue, that would make it keep 1,000, maybe even 2,000 years. Naturally, we're putting in a Bible, a copy of the Constitution of the United States, and of course, a copy of William Shakespeare's plays. What do you say, folks? What do you think we should put in it? You know, Babylon once had 2 million people in it. And all we know about them is the names of kings, copies of wheat contracts, and copies of contracts for the sale of slaves. Yet every night, the family would gather around the table for dinner. The father would come home from work. The smoke would go up the chimney. Same as here. And even in Greece and Rome, all we know about the real life of people back then is what we can piece together from the joking poems and the comedies they wrote for the theater back then. So I'm going to have a copy of this play put in the cornerstone, so that people 1,000 years from now will know a few simple facts about us. More than the Treaty of Versailles and the Limburg flight. You know what I mean? So people 1,000 years from now will know that this is the way we were in the provinces north of New York in the 20th century. This is the way we were. In our growing up, in our marrying, in our living, and in our dying. Well, a great deal of time's gone by. It's evening. You can hear choir practice going on in the Congregational Church over there. The children are at home doing their schoolwork. The whole day is running down like a tired clock.
Now, look here, everybody. Music come into the world to give pleasure. Softer. Softer. Get it out of your heads that music's only good when it's loud. You leave loudness to the Methodists. You couldn't beat them, even if you wanted to. Now again, tenors. Ready?
Emily.
Hello?
Hello.
Ma, isn't the moonlight terrible? I can't work at all.
Emily, did you get the answer to the third problem?
Which?
The third?
Why, yes, George. That's the easiest of them all.
Emily, I just don't see it. Could
All
you
right.
give me a hint?
I'll tell you one thing. The answer is in yards.
In yards? How do you mean?
In square yards.
Oh, square yards.
Yes, George? Don't you see?
Yeah.
In square yards of wallpaper.
Oh, wallpaper. Now I see. Thanks, Emily.
You're welcome. My, isn't the moonlight terrible? And with choir practice going on, I think that if you held your breath, you could hear the train all the way to Contaccook. Hear it, George?
What do you know?
Well, I guess I'd better go back and try to work.
Good night, Emily. And thanks.
Good night, George.
Before I forget it, how many of you will be able to come in Tuesday afternoon and sing at Fred Percy's wedding? Show your hands. That'll be fine. That'll be right nice. Now we'll do Art Thou Languid, Art Thou Weary. The question, ladies and gentlemen. Make it talk. Ready?
Oh, George, can you come down a minute?
Yes, Paul.
Make yourself comfortable, George. I'll only keep you a minute. George, how old are you?
I'm 16, almost 17.
Mm-hmm. What do you want to do when you get older?
Well, you know, Pa, I want to be a farmer on Uncle Luke's farm.
And you'll be willing, will you, to get up early and milk and feed the stock? And you'll be able to hoe and hay all day?
Sure I will. What are you saying?
Well, George, while I was in my office today, I heard a funny sound. And what do you think it was? It was your mother chopping wood. There you see your mother, getting up early, cooking meals all day long, washing and ironing. And still she has to go out in the backyard and chop wood. Suppose she just got tired of asking you. She just gave up and decided it was easier to do it herself. And you eat her meals. And you put on the clothes she keeps nice for you. And you run off and play baseball. Like she's some hired girl that we keep around the house, but we don't like very much. Well, I knew all I had to do was bring it to your attention. Here's a handkerchief, son. George, I've decided to raise your spending money by 25 cents a week. Not, of course, for chopping wood for your mother, because that's a present you give her, but because you're getting older, and I imagine there are lots of things you must find to do with it.
Thanks, Pa.
Let's see. Tomorrow's your payday. You can count on it. Probably Rebecca will think she ought to have some too. I wonder where your mother could have gone. Choir practice never was as late as this before.
It's only 8:30, Pa.
I don't know why she's in that old choir. She hasn't any more voice than an old crow. Traipsing around the streets at this hour of night. Just about time you retired, don't you think?
Yes, Pa.
Good night, Martha. Good night, Mr. Foster.
My slave.
I'll tell Mr. Webb. I know he'll want to put it in the paper.
Good night, Irma. Myrtle Webb, look at that moon, will you?
Potato weather for sure.
Naturally, I didn't want to say anything in front of those others. But now we're alone. Really, it is the worst scandal that ever was in this town.
What?
Simon Stimson.
No, Luella.
But Julia, to have the organist of the church drinking and drunk year after year. You know who's drunk tonight?
Now, Luella, we all know about Mr. Stimson.
And we all know the troubles he's been through. And Dr. Ferguson knows too. And if Dr. Ferguson keeps him there on his job, the only thing the rest of us can do is just not to notice it.
Not notice it? But it's getting worse.
No, it isn't, Luella. Now, I've been in that choir twice as long as you have, and it doesn't happen near so often. Oh, I hate to get to bed on a night like this, but I better hurry. Those children will be sitting up till all hours. Good night, Luella.
Can you get home safe, Luella?
It's bright as day. I can see Mr. Soames scowling in the window. You know, they think we'd be dancing the way the men folk carry on.
Well, we had a real good time.
Good night.
You're late enough.
Hey, Frank, it may be later than usual.
And you stopping at the corner to gossip with a lot of hens.
Oh, Frank, don't be grouchy. Come out and smell the heliotrope. Ah, isn't that wonderful? What did you do all the time I was away?
Oh, I read, as usual. What were the girls gossiping about tonight?
Well, believe me, Frank, there was something to gossip about.
Simon Stimson far gone, was he?
Worst I've ever seen him. How will that end, Frank? Dr. Ferguson can't forgive him forever.
I guess I know more about Simon Stimson's affairs than anybody in this town. People just ain't made for small-town life. I don't know how that'll end. If there isn't anything we can do, but just let it be. Come on, get in.
No, not yet. Frank, I'm worried about you.
What are you worried about?
I think it's my duty to make plans for you to get a real rest and change. And if I get that legacy, well, I'm going to insist on it.
Now, Julia, there's no sense in going over all that again.
Frank, you're just unreasonable.
Come on, Julia, it's getting late. First thing you know, you'll catch cold. I gave George a piece of my mind tonight. I reckon you'll have your wood chopped for a while anyways. No. Start getting upstairs.
Oh dear, there's always so many things to pick up, seems like. You know, Frank, Mrs. Fairchild always locks her front door. All those people at that part of town do.
They're getting citified, that's the trouble with them. They haven't got anything fit to burgle and everybody knows it.
Get out, Rebecca. You're always spoiling everything.
Why can't I look for just a minute?
Use your own window.
I did, but you can't see the moon from my window. George, do you know what I think? Do you? I think that maybe the moon is just getting nearer and nearer, and then there will be a big explosion.
Rebecca, you don't know anything. If the moon were getting nearer, then the guys who stay up all night with their telescopes, they would see it first, and they'd tell about it, and it'd be in all the newspapers.
I guess you're right. But George, is the moon shining on South America, Canada, and half the whole world?
Probably is.
It's 9:30 in Grover's Corners. Most of the lights are out. No? There's Constable Warren trying a few doors on Main Street. Here comes Editor Webb after putting his newspaper to bed.
Good evening, Bill.
Evening, Mr. Webb.
Quite a moon. Yep. All quiet tonight?
Simon Simpson's rolling around a little. Just saw his wife moving out to hunt for him, so I looked the other way. There he is now.
Good evening, Simon. Town settled down for the night. Yes, good evening. Town settled down for the night pretty well. I guess we better do the same. Can I walk a long ways with you? Good night.
I don't know how that's going to end, Mr. Webb.
He's seen a peck of trouble, one thing after another. Oh, Bill, if you see Winnie out late, just give her a word for me, will you?
Yeah, I don't think she'll give you no trouble. She's a good kid.
Thanks, Bill. Good night.
Good night.
Who's that up there? Is that you, Myrtle?
No, it's me, Papa.
Well, why aren't you in bed?
I don't know. I just can't sleep yet, Papa. The moonlight's so wonderful. And the smell of Mrs. Gibbs's heliotrope. Can you smell it?
Yes. Have having any troubles on your mind, have you, Emily?
Troubles, Papa? No?
Well, enjoy yourself, but don't let your mother catch you. Good night, Emily.
Good night, Papa.
George, I never told you about the letter that my friend Jane Croffett got from her minister while she was sick. He wrote Jane a letter, and on the envelope, the address was like this. It said, Jane Croffett, the Croffett Farm, Grover's Corners, Sutton County, New Hampshire, United States of America.
What's funny about that?
Well, if you would let me finish. United States of America, continent of North America, Western Hemisphere, the solar system, the Earth, the Earth, and then the solar system, and then the universe, and then the mind of God. That's what it said on her envelope.
You know.
And the postman brought it to her all the same.
What do you know?
Well, that's the end of the first act, folks. You can now go and smoke, those who smoke. 3 years have gone by. Yes, the sun has come up over 1,000 times. Summer and winter has pierced the mountain a little bit more. The rain has brought down some dirt. Some babies that weren't even born yet just begun talking real sentences. And a number of people who thought they were young and spry realized they can't quite bound up a flight of stairs without their heart fluttering a little. All that can happen in 1,000 days. Nature's been pushing and contriving too, in many ways. A number of our young people fell in love and got married. Mountain got bit away a few fractions of an inch. Millions of gallons of water went by the mill. And here and there, a new home was set up under a roof. You know, most everybody gets married. And here in Grover's Corners, there aren't hardly any exceptions. Most everybody climbs into their graves married. The first act was called The Daily Life. This one is called Love and Marriage. There's another act coming after this. I reckon you can all guess what that's about. So, it's 3 years later. It's July 7th, 1904, just after high school commencement. It's that time of year most of our young people jump up and get married. It seems as soon as they finish their last examinations in solid geometry and Cicero's orations, they suddenly see themselves fit to be married. It's early morning. Only this time it's been raining. It's been pouring and thundering. Mrs. Gibbs' garden and Mrs. Webb's here, drenched. Bean poles and pea vines, drenched. All over yesterday on Main Street, the rain looked like curtains being blown along. Looks like it may begin at any minute. There, you can hear the 5:45 for Boston. Mrs. Gibbs and Mrs. Webb coming downstairs to make breakfast, just as though it was any ordinary day. I don't have to tell the women in my audience, these two ladies you see before you both cook 3 meals a day. One for 20 years and the other for 40. And no summer vacation, mind you. They both brought up 2 children apiece, washed, cleaned, ironed, and mopped the house, and never a nervous breakdown. It's like what one of those Middle West poets once said. In order to have life, you have to love life. In order to love life, you have to have life. It's what they call a vicious circle.
Giddy up, Betsy.
Here comes Howie Newsom delivering the milk. Here comes Cy Crowd Jr. delivering the paper, just like her brother before her.
Morning, Howie.
Morning, Cy. Anything in the papers that I ought to know?
Nothing much, except we're losing about the best baseball pitcher Grover's Corners has ever seen, George Gibbs.
Reckon he is.
He could hit and run bases, too.
Yep, mighty fine ball player. Whoa, Bessie. Bessie. I guess I can stop and talk if I have a mind to.
I just don't see how he could give up something like that, just to get married. We Would you, Howie?
Can't tell, Si. Never had no talent that way. Morning, Bill. You're up early?
Yep. Seeing if there's anything I can do to prevent a flood. The river's been rising all night.
Well, Si Crowell here is all worked up about George Gibbs retiring from baseball.
Yes, sir. That's the way it goes. Back in '84, we had a player, Si. Even George Gibbs couldn't touch him. His name was Hank Todd. Went down to Maine to become a parson. Wonderful ball player. Hallie, how does the weather look to you?
Oh, it ain't bad. Think it may lighten up for good.
Morning, Howie. Do you think it'll rain again?
Morning, Miss Gibbs. Well, it rained so heavy, I think it may lighten up for good.
Certainly hope it will.
How much did you want today?
I'm going to have a house full of relations, Howie. Looks to me like I'll need 3 a cream, 2 a milk.
Yes, Husband told me to tell you how we both hope they'll be very happy, Miss Gibbs. No, they will.
Thanks a lot, Howie. Tell your husband I hope he gets there to the wedding.
Yep, he'll be there. He'll be there if he can. Morning, Miss Webb.
Well, good morning, Howie. Now, I told you 4 quarts of milk, but I hope you can spare me another.
Yes, and the 2 cream?
Mm-hmm. Will it rain again, Howie?
Well, I was just saying to Miss Gibbs how it may lighten up. And Mr. Newsom told me to tell you as how we both hope they'll be very happy, Miss Webb. No, they will.
Thank you, and thank Mr. Newsom, and we count on seeing you both at the wedding.
Yep, couldn't miss a thing like that. Come on, Bessie.
Well, Ma, the day has come. You're losing one of your chicks.
Frank Gibbs, don't say another word. I feel like crying every minute. Sit down and drink your coffee.
Groom's up shaving himself. Only there ain't an awful lot to shave. Whistling and singing, like he's glad to leave us. Every once in a while he looks in the mirror and says I do, but it doesn't sound very convincing to me.
I declare, I don't know how he'll get along. I've arranged his clothes and seen to it he's put warm things on. Frank, they're too young. Emily won't think of such things. He'll catch his death of cold within a week.
I was remembering my wedding morning, Julia.
Now don't start that, Frank Gibbs.
I was the scaredest young fella in all New Hampshire. Thought I'd make a mistake for sure. When I saw you coming down that aisle, you were the prettiest girl I'd ever seen. The only trouble was I'd never seen you before. There I was in the Congregational Church marrying a total stranger.
And how do you think I felt, Frank? Weddings are perfectly awful things. Farces, that's what they are. Here, I've made you something.
I'm Julia Hersey, French toast.
Well, it ain't hard to make, and I had to do something.
How'd you sleep last night, Julia?
Well, I heard a lot of the hours struck off.
Yes, I get a shock every time I think of George setting out to be a family man. That great gangling thing. You know, Julia, there isn't anything so terrifying in this world as a son. The relationship between father and son is the darndest awkwardness.
Well, mother and daughter's no picnic either, let me tell you.
They'll have their troubles, that's for sure. But that's none of our business. Everybody's got a right to their own troubles.
Yes, people are meant to go through life 2 by 2. Ain't natural to be lonesome.
Do you know one of the things I was scared of when I married you?
Oh, go along with you.
I was afraid we wouldn't have conversation more than will last us a few weeks. That we'd just run out and eat our meals in silence. That's a fact. Well, you and I have been conversing for more than 20 years now. We haven't had any noticeable barren spells.
Well, good weather, bad weather. Ain't very choice, but I always find something to talk about. Did you hear Rebecca stirring around upstairs?
No. Only day of the year she hasn't been up there managing everybody else's business. She's locked in her room. I got the impression she's crying.
Lord's sake, this has got to stop. Rebecca! Rebecca! Come and get your breakfast!
Morning, everybody. Only 5 more hours to live.
George Gibbs, where are you going?
I'm just stepping across the grass to see my girl.
You put on your overshoes. It's raining torrents. You don't go out of this house without you being prepared for it.
Ma, it's just a step.
George, you'll catch your death of cold and cough all throughout the service.
George, do as your mother tells you.
From tomorrow on, you can kill yourself in all weathers. But when you live in my house, you'll live wisely, thank you. Maybe Mrs. Webb isn't used to callers at 7 in the morning. Here, take a cup of coffee first.
Back in just a minute. Good morning, Mother Webb.
scare me. You can come in a minute out of the cold, but you know I can't ask you in.
Why not?
You know as well as I do, George, that the groom can't see his bride on the wedding day, not before he sees her in church.
Oh, that's just a superstition. Good morning, Mr. Webb.
Good morning, George.
Mr. Webb, you don't believe in that superstition, do you?
There's a lot of common sense in some superstitions, George.
Millions have followed it, George, and you don't want to be the first to fly in the face of custom.
How's Emily?
Oh, she hasn't woken up yet. I haven't heard a sound out of her.
Emily's asleep?
Well, no wonder. We're up till all hours, sewing and packing. Now, I'll tell you what you do. You sit down here and with Mr. Webb a while and drink this coffee, and I'll go up and see that she doesn't surprise you. Oh, there's bacon there too, but be quick about it.
Well, George, how are you?
Fine, I'm fine. Mr. Webb, what sense could there be in a superstition like that?
Well, you see, George, on a wedding morning, a girl's head's apt to be full of clothes and one thing and another. Don't you think that's probably it?
Yes, never thought of that.
Girl's apt to be a mite nervous on her wedding day.
Well, I wish a fellow could just get married without all that marching up and down.
Every man that's ever lived has felt that way about it, George. It hasn't been any use. It's the women folk who have built up weddings, my boy. For a while now, the women have it all their own. A man looks pretty small at a wedding, George. All those good women standing shoulder to shoulder, making sure that the knot's tied in a mighty public way.
But you believe in it, don't you, Mr. Webb?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Marriage is a wonderful thing. Wonderful thing. Don't you forget it, George.
No, sir. Mr. Webb, how old were you when you got married?
Well, you see, I'd been away to college, and I'd taken a little time to get settled. Oh, but Mrs. Webb, why, she wasn't much older than what Emily is. Age hasn't got much to do with it, George, not compared with other things.
What were you going to say, Mr. Webb?
I don't know. Was I going to say something? George, I was thinking the other night of some advice my father gave me when I got married. Charles, he said, start out early, showing who's boss. Best thing to do, just to give an order, even if it don't make sense, just so she'll learn to obey. And if anything about your wife irritates you, her conversation or anything, best thing to do is just to get up and leave the house. That'll make it clear to her, he said. Oh yes, and never, never let your wife know how much money you have. Never.
Mr. Webb, I don't think I could...
So I took the opposite of my father's advice, and I've been happy ever since. And may that be a lesson to you, George. Never ask advice on personal matters. Are you going to raise chickens on your farm?
What?
Are you going to raise chickens on your farm?
Well, Uncle Luke's never been much interested, but I thought that...
A book came into my office the other day, George, on the philo system of raising chickens. I want you to read it. I'm thinking of starting in a small way, in the backyard, and I'll put an incubator in the cellar, so that we can get started right away.
Charles, are you talking about that old incubator again? I thought you two would be talking about things worthwhile.
Well, Myrtle, if you want to give the boys some good advice, I'll go upstairs and leave you alone with them.
Now, George, Emily sends you her love, but she doesn't want to lay eyes on you. Goodbye.
You know, Myrtle, I guess you don't know about that older superstition.
What do you mean, Charles?
Since the cavemen, no bridegroom should see his father-in-law on the day of the wedding, or near it. Now remember that.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Webb. I'll have to interrupt again here, I'm afraid. See, you want to know how this began. This wedding, this plan to spend a lifetime together. I know I'm awfully interested in how things like this begin. You know how it is, you're 21 or 22, and you make some big decisions. Bam! You're 70. You've been a lawyer for 50 years, and that old, white-haired lady sitting next to you has eaten over 50,000 meals for you. How do such things begin? Emily and George conversation they had when they first knew that, as the saying goes, they were meant for one another. Before they do that, I want you to remember something for me. I want you to remember what it was like to be very young, particularly the days you were first in love. You were like a person sleepwalking. You didn't quite know what street you were on, didn't quite hear everything that was being said to you. You're just a little bit crazy. Will you remember that for me? Now, they're going to be coming out of high school at 3 o'clock. George has just been elected president of the junior class. As it's June, that means he'll be president of the senior class all of next year. And Emily, well, she's just been elected secretary and treasurer. I don't have to tell you how important that is. Yep, there they are, coming down Main Street now.
I can't, Louise. I've got to go home. Oh, Ernestine, can you come over tonight and do Latin?
Isn't that Cicero just the worst thing?
Well, tell your mother you have to. Goodbye, Helen. Goodbye, Fred.
Could I carry your books home for you, Emily?
Why, thank you. It isn't far.
Excuse me one moment. Say, Bob, if I'm a little late to practice, start anyway. Give Herb some long high ones.
Goodbye, Lizzie.
Goodbye, Lizzie. I'm awfully glad you were elected too, Emily.
Thank you.
Emily, why are you mad at me?
I'm not mad at you.
You've been treating me so funny lately.
Well, since you asked, I might as well say it right out, George. Goodbye, Miss Corcoran.
Bye, Miss Corcoran. What is it?
I don't like the whole change that's come over you in the last year. I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings, but I've got to tell the truth and shame the devil.
Shame? What do you mean?
Well, up to a year ago, I used to like you a lot, and I used to watch you as you did everything, because we've been friends for so long. But then you started spending all your time at baseball, and you never stopped to speak to anybody anymore, not even to your own family you didn't. And George, it's a fact you've gotten awful, stuck up and conceited. All the girls say so. They may not say so to your face, but that's what they say about you behind your back. And it hurts me a little to hear them say it, but I've got to agree with them a little. Now, I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings, but I can't be sorry I said it.
I'm glad you said it. I never thought that such a thing were happening to me. I guess it's hard for a fellow not to have faults creep into his character.
Well, I always expect a man to be perfect, and I think he should be.
I don't think anyone's perfect, Emily.
Well, my father is, and as far as I can see, your father is. And there's no reason on earth why you shouldn't be too.
Well, I figure it's the other way around. Men aren't naturally good, girls are.
You might as well know right now that I'm not perfect. It's not as easy for a girl to be as perfect as a man because we girls are more nervous. No, I'm sorry I said all that about you. I don't know what made me say it. It's not true. And suddenly I feel that it isn't important anyway.
Emily, would you like an ice cream soda or something before you go home?
Why, thank you. I would.
Good afternoon, Mr. Steve. Hi, Slocum.
Hello, George. Hello, Emily. Oh, you have? Why, Emily, when? What have you been crying about?
Oh, she just got an awful scare, Mr. Morgan. She almost got run over by that hardware store wagon. Everybody says Tom Huckins drives like a crazy man.
Well, you look all shook up, I tell you, Emily. You look both ways before crossing Main Street these days. Gets worse every year. Now, what you have?
I'll have a strawberry phosphate. Thank you, Mr. Morgan.
No. Have an ice cream soda with me. 2 strawberry ice cream sodas, Mr. Morgan.
2 strawberry ice cream sodas? Yes, sir, yes, sir. You know, there are 125 horses in Grover's Corners. This minute I'm talking to you. Why, State Inspector was in here yesterday. Now, they're talking about bringing these automobiles. And to clue what they are, I think the best thing to do is just to stay at home. Why, I remember when a dog could go to sleep all day on Main Street, not a thing come along to disturb him. Well, there they are. Enjoy them. Yes, Mrs. Ellis, what can I do for you?
They're so expensive.
No, don't think of that. We're celebrating our election. And then, do you want to know what else I'm celebrating?
What?
I'm celebrating because I've got a friend who always tells me the things that ought to be told to me.
George, please don't think of that. I don't know why I said it. It's not true. You're not the
Emily,
person that...
I'm glad you said it. But you'll see, I'm gonna change. I'm gonna change so quick, you bet I'm gonna change. And, Emily, I wanna ask you a favor.
Yes?
Emily, if I go to State Agriculture College next year, would you write me a letter once in a while?
I certainly will. I certainly will, George. It certainly seems like being away 3 years, you get awful out of touch with things. Maybe letters from Grover's Corners wouldn't be so interesting after a while. I mean, Grover's Corners isn't a very important place when you think of all of New Hampshire, but I think it's a very nice town.
Yeah, the day wouldn't come when I wouldn't want to know everything that's happening here, Emily. I know that's true.
Well, I'll try to make my letters interesting.
You know, Emily, whenever I, meet a farmer, I always ask him if he thinks it's important to go to agriculture college.
Why?
Yeah, and some of them say it's even a waste of time. You can get all that information anyways out of the pamphlets that the government sends out. And Uncle Luke's getting old. He's about ready for me to take over the farm tomorrow, if I could.
Why, George?
Yeah, and like you said, being gone all the time in other places and meeting other people, gosh, if such a thing could happen, I don't want to go away. I guess that new people aren't any better than the old ones. I'll bet they almost never are. Emily, I feel like you're as good of a friend as I've got, and I don't need to go and meet other people in other towns.
But George, maybe it's very important for you to go and learn all those things about soil and cattle judging and all those things. Of course, I don't know.
You know what? I won't go. I'll tell Pa about it tonight.
But George, it's a whole year away. I don't see why you have to decide right now.
You know, what you said about that fault in my character, what you said was right. But there was one thing wrong in it. And that was when you said that for a year now, I wasn't noticing people. And, well, you, for instance, you said that you were watching me when I did everything. I was doing the same about you all the time. I always thought about you as one of the chief people I thought about. Where you were sitting on the bleachers and who you're with. And for 3 days now, I've been trying to walk home with you. But something's always gotten in the way. Yesterday, I was standing over against the wall, waiting to walk home with you. You walked home with Miss Corcoran.
George, life's awful funny. How could I have known that? Why, I thought that
Emily.
you never...
Listen, I'm going to tell you why I'm not going to agriculture college. I think that once you find a person that you're very fond of, and someone who's fond of you too and likes you enough to be interested in your character, well, I think that's just as important as college is. Even more so. That's what I think.
I think it's awfully important too.
Emily, if I do make a big change and improve and all that, could you be, would you be?
I am now. I always have been.
So I guess this is an important talk we're having.
Yes. Yes.
Wait a minute, I'll walk you home.
All right.
Mr. Morgan, I'll have to go home and pay for these. It'll only take me a minute.
Why, George Gibbs, do you mean to tell me?
I had reasons, Mr. Morgan. Look, here's my gold watch. You can keep it until I come back with the money.
You keep your gold watch, George. I'll trust you.
It'll only be 5 minutes.
I trust you 10 years, George. Not a day over. You hear me? All over your shocking, Emily?
Yes, Mr. Morgan. It was nothing.
Have a nice day.
Ready?
Well, now ready to get on the wedding. There are a lot of things that go on during a wedding, a lot of thoughts that go on during a wedding as well. We can't get all into one wedding, especially not in Grover's Corners, awfully plain and short. In this wedding, I play the minister. That gives me the right to say a few more things about it. For a while now, the play gets pretty serious. You see, some churches say that marriage is a sacrament. I don't know quite what that means, but I can guess. It's like what Mrs. Gibbs said a moment ago. People were made to go through life 2 by 2. This is a good wedding. But people can be so put together that even at a good wedding, there's lots of confusion deep down in people's minds. We thought that ought to be in our play too. You see, the real hero in this play isn't on this stage at all. I reckon you can all guess who that is. It's like what one of those European fellas once said. Every baby born into this world is nature's attempt at making a perfect human being. Well, we've seen nature pushing and contriving for quite some time now. We all know she's interested in quantity, but I think she's interested in quality too. That's why I'm in the ministry. And don't forget all the other witnesses at this wedding, the ancestors, millions of them. They all went through life 2 by 2 also, absolutely millions of them. Well, that was all my sermon. It wasn't very long anyway.
I don't know why I should be crying. I suppose there's nothing to cry about. It's just, it came over me at breakfast this morning. There was Emily sitting there eating her breakfast that she's done for the last 17 years, and now she's going off to eat it in someone else's house. I suppose that's it. But oh, Emily, she suddenly said, I can't eat another bite, and then she put her head down on the table and she cried. I've got to say it. There's something downright cruel about sending our girls out into marriage this way. I hope one of her girlfriends had told her a thing or two. It's cruel, I know, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything. The whole world's wrong. That's what's the matter. There they come.
George, you look scared to death. Doesn't he look scared to death? Come play baseball with us.
George, is that you? Oh my gosh, what are you wearing? Since when are you getting married? What kind of girl would marry you?
That'll do, that'll do. Used to have an awful lot of that stuff back in the day. Rome and later. We're more civilized now. At least so they say.
George, what's the matter?
Ma, all I want to do is be a fellow.
But George, you wanted this.
No, Ma, listen.
No, George, you're a man now.
Listen, Ma, for the last time I ask you. Why? I don't want to grow old. Why is everybody pushing me so?
Now stop. If anyone should hear you, why, I'm ashamed of you.
Where's Emily?
You gave me such a turn, George.
Cheer up, Mom. Getting married.
Let me catch my breath a minute.
Now, Mom, you say Thursday nights. Emily and I, we're coming over for dinner every Thursday night. You'll see. Mom, what are you crying for? Come on, we've got to get ready for this.
I've never felt so alone in my whole life. And George over there looking so... I hate him. I wish I were dead. Papa!
Emily, now don't get upset.
Papa, I don't want to get married.
Shh, everything's all right.
Why can't I just stay for a while as I am? Let's go away.
No, Emily. Now stop and think a minute.
Papa, don't you remember you used to say, all the time you used to say, that I was your girl. There must be lots of places we could go. I can work for you and keep house.
Shh,
and
Emily, you mustn't think of such things. You're just nervous. George, will you come here a minute? Why, you're marrying the best young fellow in the world. George is a fine fellow.
But Papa...
I'm giving away my daughter, George. Do you think you can take care of her?
Mr. Webb, I want to try. Emily, I love you, Emily. I need you.
Well, if you love me, help me. All I want is for someone to love me.
Emily, I will. I'll do my best.
And forever, do you hear? Forever and ever?
Come, they're waiting for us. Now you know it'll be all right. Come quick.
You, George, take Emily to be your lawfully wedded wife to have.
Isn't this a lovely wedding? Loveliest wedding I ever saw. Do you love a good wedding, don't you? Doesn't she make a lovely bride?
I do. And you, Emily, take George for your lawfully wedded husband to have.
Don't know when I've been to such a lovely wedding, but I always cry. Don't know why it is, but I always cry. I guess I just like to see young people happy, don't you? I think it's lovely.
I've married over 200 couples in my day. Do I believe in it? I don't know. M marries N, millions of them. The go-kart, the cottage, the Sunday afternoon rides in the Ford, the first rheumatism, the grandkids, the second rheumatism, the deathbed, the reading of the will. Once in 1,000 times, it's interesting. Well, let's have Mendelssohn's Wedding March.
Don't they make a lovely couple? Don't know when I've been to such a lovely wedding before. I guess I just like to see young people happy. I always say, happiness. That is the greatest thing. The most important thing is to be happy.
Well, that's the end of the second act, folks. 10 minutes intermission. This time, 9 years have gone by. Summer 1913. There's a few gradual changes in Grover's Corners. Horses are getting rarer. Farmers are driving into town in Fords. Everybody locks their doors at night. There ain't been any burglars, but everybody's heard about them. You'd be surprised, though. On the whole, things don't change much around here. This here is certainly an important part of Grover's Corners. It's a hilltop. A windy hilltop. Lots of sky, clouds, and often lots of sun, moon, and stars. You come up here on a fine afternoon and see range on range of hills. Awful blue they are, up there by Lake Sinope and Lake Winnipesaukee. If you've got a glass, you can see the White Mountains, Mount Washington, where North Conway and Conway is. And of course, our favorite mountain, right here, Mount Monadnock, and all the towns that lie around it. East Jaffrey, Peterborough, Dublin, way down there, Grover's Corners. Over here are the old stones, 1670, 1680. They're strong-minded people, came a long way to be independent. In summer, people walk up and down these roads, laughing at the funny names on the tombstones. Don't do any harm. Genealogists come up from Boston and get paid by city folk for looking up their ancestors. They want to make sure they're daughters of the American Revolution or of the Mayflower. I guess that doesn't do any harm either. Back here are the graves of the Civil War veterans, New Hampshire boys. See the iron flags on top of them. They had a notion the Union ought to stay together, but they never really saw more than 50 miles with themselves. All they knew was the name, friends. The United States of America. The United States of America. And they went and died about it. This here is the new part of the cemetery. Here's your friend, Mrs. Gibbs, Mr. Simpson, who was organist of the Congregational Church. Let me see. Mrs. Soames, who enjoyed the wedding so. You remember. And Editor Webb's girl, Winnie. She died on a camping trip to North Conway. An awful lot of sorrows just quiet down up here. People just wild with grief. They brought their relatives up to this place. And in time, sunny, rainy, snowy days, they're glad they're coming up to this here place. They know they're coming up here themselves once their fit is over. You know, there are some things we all know, and we don't take them out, look at them very often. We all know that something is eternal. Ain't houses, ain't names, ain't earth, and it ain't even the stars. Everybody knows that something deep down in our bones is eternal about every single little thing. All the greatest people that have ever lived have been telling us that for the last 500 years. Yet you'd be surprised how easily people are losing hold of it. There's something way down deep, each and every one of us, that's eternal. You know as well as I do that the dead don't stay interested in us living folk much longer. Gradually they lose hold of this earth. The ambitions they had, the pleasures they had, the things they suffered, the people they loved, they get weaned away. It's the way I put it, weaned away. And as they do, they stay here in the earth. Well, part of them burns out, burns away. And they slowly become indifferent to life here in Grover's Corners. They're waiting. They're waiting for something they know is coming, something important and great. Aren't they waiting for that eternal part to come out clear? And some of the things you're going to say maybe will hurt your feelings. That's just the way it is. Money and miser, enemy and enemy, mother and daughter, husband and wife. All those terribly important things kind of grow pale around here. What's left? When your identity's gone and your memory, Mrs. Smith. Well, there are still some living people. Here's Joe Stoddard, managing newly made grave. And here's Samantha Craig, New Hampshire girl who moved out town to go west.
Good afternoon. Joe Stoddard.
Good afternoon, good afternoon. Let me see now. Do I know you?
I'm Samantha Craig. Don't you remember me?
Good. Gracious sakes alive. Of all people. I should have known you'd be back for the funeral. You've been away a long time.
Yes, I've been away almost 12 years now. I'm in business up in Buffalo now, Joe, but I was in the East. Heard news of my cousin's death. I thought I'd combine things a little and come see the old place. You look well.
Yes, can't complain. Very sad, our journey today, Sam.
Yes.
Yes. I always say I hate to supervise when a young person is taken. They'll be here any minute now. I had to come early today. My son's supervising at the home.
Old Farmer McCarty. I used to do chores for him after school. He had lumbago.
Yes, brought from McCarty up here a number of years ago now.
Why? This is my Aunt Julia. I've forgotten that she... Of course.
Yes, Doc Gibbs lost his wife about 2 or 3 years ago now. Around this time. And today's another pretty bad blow for him, too.
That's my sister Carrie's girl, Samantha, Sam Craig.
I'm always uncomfortable when they're around.
Simon.
Do they choose their own verses much, Joe?
No, not usual. Mostly the bereaved pick a verse.
Doesn't sound like my Aunt Julia. Aren't many of those Hersey sisters left? Now, let me see. I wanted to find my father and mother's...
Over there with the Craigs, Avenue F.
Simon Stimson. He was an organist at church. Drank a lot, we used to say.
Yes, he'd seen a peck of trouble. No one was supposed to know about it. He took his own life, you know?
Did he?
Yes, he hung himself in the attic. They tried to hush it up, but of course it got around. He chose his own epitaph. You can see it there. Well, it ain't a verse exactly.
It's just some notes of music. What is it?
Oh, I wouldn't know. It was all wrote up in the Boston papers at the time.
Oh, what'd she die of?
Who?
My cousin.
Oh, didn't you know? Had trouble bringing a baby into the world. 'Twas your second, though. There's a little boy about 4 years old.
Gray's gonna be over there?
Yes, there ain't much more room left amongst the Gibbses, so we're opening a whole new Gibbs section over on Avenue B. You'll excuse me now. I see they're coming.
Who is it, Julia? My daughter-in-law, Emily Webb. Why? The road up here must have been awfully muddy. What did she die of, Julia? In childbirth. Childbirth. I've forgotten all about that. Why, wasn't life just awful and wonderful?
Wonderful, was it?
Simon, now remember. I remember Emily's wedding. Wasn't it a lovely wedding? I also remember her reciting her poem at graduation exercises. She was the smartest girl that ever graduated high school. I heard Professor Wilkins say so time after time. You know, I visited them at their farm right before I died. Perfectly beautiful farm.
It's on the same road we lived on.
Yeah, Rice Park Farm.
I always liked that hymn. I was hoping they'd sing a hymn.
Hello? Hello, Emily.
Hello, Miss Gibbs.
Hello, Mother Gibbs.
Emily.
Hello. It's raining.
Yes, they'll be gone soon, dear. Just rest yourself.
It seems like thousands and thousands of years since Papa, remember that was my favorite hymn. Oh, I don't like being new here. I wish I'd been here a long time. Oh, how do you do, Mr. Simpson?
How do you do, Emily?
Mother Gibbs, George and I have made that farm into just the best thing you ever saw. We thought of you all the time. We wanted to show you the new barn and the great long cement drinking fountain for the stock. It's fine. It won't be the same to George without me, but it's a lovely farm. Live people don't understand, do they?
No, dear. Not very much.
They're sort of shut up in little boxes. I feel as if I knew them last 1,000 years ago. My little boy is spending the day at Mr. Carter's. Oh, Mr. Carter, my little boy is spending the day at your house.
Is he?
Yes, he loves it there. Mother Gibbs, we've a Ford too. Never gives us any trouble. I don't drive though. Mother Gibbs, when does this feeling go away? The feeling of being one of them. How long does it?
Shh, dear. Just wait and be patient.
I know. Look, they're finished. They're going. Father Gibbs is bringing some of my flowers to you. He looks just like George, doesn't he? I never realized how troubled and how in the dark live persons are. Look at him. I loved him so. From morning till night, that's all they are. Troubled.
Little cooler than it was. Yes, that rain's cooled it off a little.
Those northeast winds always do the same thing, don't they? If it isn't rain, it's a 3-day blow.
But Mother Gibbs, one can go back. One can go back there again into living. I feel it. I know it. Why just then for a moment I was thinking about the farm, and for a minute I was there. And my baby was sitting on my lap as plain as day.
Yes, of course you can.
I can go and live all those days over again. Why not?
All I can say is, Emily, don't.
But it's true, isn't it? I can go and live back there again?
Yes, some have tried. They soon come back here.
Don't do it, Emily.
Emily, don't. It isn't what you think it to be.
But I won't live over a sad day. I'll choose a happy one. I'll choose the day I first knew that I loved George. Why should that be painful?
Well, you not only live it, but you watch yourself living it.
Yes?
And as you do, you see the thing that they down there don't see. You know the future. You know what's going to happen afterwards.
But is that painful? Why?
That's not the only reason why you shouldn't do it, Emily. When you've been here longer, you'll see that our life here is to forget all that and think only of what's ahead and be ready for what's ahead. When you've been here longer, you'll understand that.
But Mother Gibbs, how can I ever forget that life? It's all I know. It's all I had.
Don't, Emily. It isn't wise. Really isn't.
But it's a thing I must know for myself anyway. I'll choose a happy day.
No. At least choose an unimportant day. Choose the least important day of your life. It will be important enough.
Well, then it can't be since I was married, or since the baby was born. But I could choose a birthday at least, can't I? I choose my 12th birthday.
Right? February 7th, 1899. Tuesday. Do you want any special time of day?
Oh, I want the whole day.
All right, we'll begin at dawn. Remember, it had been snowing for several days before. We'd stopped the night before, and they'd begun clearing the roads. The sun's coming up now.
There's Main Street. And there's Mr. Morgan's drugstore before he changed it. And there's the livery stable.
Yes. You see before you is 14 years ago, 1899.
That's the town I knew as a little girl. Oh, and there's the old white fence that used to be around our house. Oh, I'd forgotten that. Oh, I love it so. Are they inside?
Yes, your mother will be coming downstairs in a minute to make breakfast.
Where will she?
You remember your father had been away for several days. He came back in the early morning train.
No?
He'd been back to his old college to make a speech in Western New York, Clinton.
There's Helen Newsom, and there's our policeman. But she's dead. He died.
Whoa, Bessie. Bessie. Morning, Bill.
Morning, Howie.
You're up early.
Been rescuing a party. Darn near froze to death down by Polish town there. Got drunk and lay out in a snowdrift. Thought he was in bed when I shook him.
Why, there's Joe Crowell.
Morning, Miss Warren. Morning, Howie.
Mama. Mom, I'm here. Oh, how young Mama looks. I didn't know Mama was ever that young.
Children, time for school.
Good morning, Howie. It's cold.
10 below by my barn, Miss Webb. Think of it. Keep yourself wrapped up.
Mom, I can't find my new hair ribbon anywhere.
Just open your eyes, dear. I laid it out on the dresser for you, special. If it were a snake, it would bite you.
Good morning, Bill. Morning, Miss Webb. You're up early.
Yes, just been back to my old college in New York State. Been any trouble here?
Well, I was called up this morning to rescue a Polish fella. Darn near froze if he was.
We must get in the paper.
No, it wasn't much.
Papa,
Good morning, Mother.
how did it go, Charles?
Oh, fine, I guess. I told him things. Everything all right here?
Yes, can't think of anything that's happened special. Being right cold. Howie Newsom says it's 10 below over by that vine.
It's colder than that at Hamilton College. Students' ears are falling off. It ain't Christian. Paper have any mistakes in it?
None that I noticed. Oh, coffee's ready when you want it. Oh, and Charles, you didn't forget that it's Emily's birthday, did you?
Yes, got something here. Where's my girl? Where's my birthday girl?
Don't interrupt her now, Charles. You can see her at breakfast. She's slow enough as it is. Hurry up, children! And I don't have to call you again.
Oh, I can't bear it. They're so young and beautiful. Why do they ever have to get old? Mom, I'm here. I love you all. Everything. I can't look at everything hard enough. Good morning, Mama.
Oh, well now, dear. A very happy birthday and many happy returns. Oh, there are some surprises there for you on the kitchen table.
Oh, Mama, you shouldn't have. I can't.
Well, birthday or no birthday, I want you to eat that breakfast good and slow. I want you to grow up to become a good, strong girl. Now, that in the blue paper there is from your Aunt Nora. And, oh, I reckon you can guess who the postcard album is from. I found it on the doorstep when I was picking up the milk. George Gibbs. Right nice of him. Must have come over in the cold pretty early.
Oh, George. I'd forgotten that.
Oh, chew that bacon good and slow. It'll keep you warm on a cold day.
Mama? Mama, look at me. Mama, look at me 1 minute as though you really saw me. Mama, 14 years have gone by. I'm dead. You're a grandmother, Mama. I married George Gibbs, Mama. Winnie's dead too. Her appendix burst on a camping trip to North Conway. We all felt just terrible about it. Don't you remember? But Mama, just for a moment, we're all together. Just for a moment, we're happy. Mama, let's look at one another.
Oh, now that and the yellow paper is something I found in the attic among your grandmother's things. You're old enough to wear it now, and I thought you'd like it.
Why, Mama, it's lovely and it's just what I wanted. It's beautiful.
Oh, yes, now that's for me. Your Aunt Carrie couldn't find one in Boston, so I had to send all the way to Concord for it. Oh, and Winnie has something for you too. She made it herself in manual tech class. She's very proud of it, so be sure to make a good fuss. Oh, your father has something for you too. Don't remember what it is myself. Oh, there it is.
Where's my girl? Where's my birthday girl?
I can't! It all goes by so fast. We don't have time to look at one another. So all that was going on, and we never realized it. Take me back, up the hill to my grave. But first, wait. One more look. Goodbye. Goodbye, world. Goodbye, Rover's Corners. Goodbye, Mama and Papa. Goodbye to clocks ticking and Mama's sunflowers and new iron dresses and hot baths and food and coffee and sleeping and waking up. Oh, Earth, you're too wonderful for anybody to realize you. Do human beings ever realize life as they live it? Every minute?
No. Saints and poets, maybe they do some.
I'm ready to go back.
Are you happy?
No. I should have listened to you. That's all human beings are. Just blind people.
Look, it's clearing up. The stars are coming out.
Oh, Mr. Stimson, I should have listened to them.
Yes, now you know. Now you know. That's what it was to be alive. To go about in a cloud of ignorance, to move up and down, trampling on the feelings of those about you, to spend and waste time as though you had 1,000,000 years. To be always at the mercy of one self-centered passion or another. Now you know. That's the happy existence you wanted to go back to. Ignorance and blindness.
Simon Stimson, that ain't the whole truth and you know it. Emily, look at that star. I forget its name. My boy Joel was a sailor. Knew them all. He used to sit on the porch evenings and tell them all by name. Yes, sir. Wonderful.
Stars mighty fine company. Yes, yes, 'tis.
Here's one of them coming.
Huh, that is so funny. But wait, it's not time for one of them to be here yet. Goodness sakes. Mother Gibbs. It's George.
Shh, dear. Just rest yourself.
It's George.
And my boy Joel, who knew the stars, he used to say it took millions of years for that speck of light to get to the earth. Don't seem like a body could believe it. But that's what he used to say. Millions of years.
Goodness, that ain't no way to behave. He ought to be home.
Mother Gibbs.
Yes, Emily?
They don't understand, do they?
No, dear. They don't understand.
Most everybody's asleep in Grover's Corners. No two lights on. Surely Hawkins has just watched the Albany train go by. In the delivery stable, people setting up late and talking. Yes. It's all clearing up now. There are the stars doing their old crisscross journeys in the sky. You know, scholars haven't settled the matter yet. They seem to think there's nothing up there. Just chalk or fire. Only this one is straining away. Straining away so much to make something of itself. Strained so hard that every 16 hours, everybody lies down and gets a good rest. It's 11 o'clock in Grover's Corners. You get a good rest too. Good night.
welcome to come backstage and take pictures, meet the cast back there. I'll go turn on the air and